Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WOWBIZ Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. If you've got a business that is performing okay, but just not really at the edge where it used to be when you got the business started years ago, this is the show, this is the episode of WOWBIZ Nebraska for you. But you know, the show is also about the entire state of Nebraska, whether it's job creation, talent attraction, and all that. So I want to talk to you today about what this show is really all about, but it can relate to you even if you own a small business or even a startup. Now, the key idea here to begin with is that innovation is the key to revitalizing the state of Nebraska, and by the way, probably is a good strategy for you to follow in your company as well. But innovation can be executed a bunch of ways. I'm going to give you one, I don't want to say foolproof, that would be overstatement, but definitely a solid way to try to innovate, whether it's product, people, organizations, or whatever. And that word is fusion. All right. Now, there are many different ways that you can execute fusion. Some people refer to it as convergence, melding, blend trend, mixing, right? But it's a very important idea insofar as creating something that is truly unique, something that you can differentiate. That's a very important element in our economy today. As you know, everything is being commoditized, right? It's all turning into parity. So you've got to keep figuring every single day, how can we stand out? How can we be unique? Fusion's a strategy. You know, let me back up now. I'm going to explain to you something very interesting. You're never going to forget this story. Back in the 50s and 60s, a gentleman named Colonel John Boyd. Colonel John Boyd really was the beginning of this whole fusionary application I'm going to share with you right now. Now, Colonel John Boyd was a genius fighter pilot during World War II. In fact, he would actually bet his buddies on the ground crew that when he went up in the air to go into battle with the Japanese over in the Far East, he would get his target and have them down in 30 seconds or less, Colonel John Boyd, or he'd have to give his entire ground crew a six-pack of beer. Back in the day, that was a big deal, right? Everyone was very excited about that, and he never failed to achieve his objective insofar as getting the enemy down. Now, Colonel John Boyd is the guy that dreamt up something that lives to this day. It's very important in the military strategy circles. In fact, it was used in a very successful strike in Afghanistan only 3 or 4 years ago, and that is called the OODA loop, O-O-D-A. It sounds kind of funny. The OODA loop is a way to assess a situation and anticipate patterns. So if you're interested in fusion, you're interested in innovation, you want to stand out, you want to do great, as we do here in the entire state of Nebraska, you're going to want to focus in on John Boyd, and you'll find very quickly on the web or wherever you look him up that he is the inventor of the OODA loop. It's a brilliant way to anticipate patterns by putting a sequence of dots or moves together. So again, the phrase here is pattern recognition, and that leads us to fusion. Now, I'll explain in greater detail. You know, Colonel Boyd was not the kind of guy that wanted to, be part of the bureaucracy at the Pentagon after he retired from fighting, up in the air. They finally said, we're going to put this guy into a teaching role, okay? And so he actually taught young fighter pilots everything that he knew in the Pentagon for almost 20 years. And he wrote several books, by the way, about military strategy at the same time. But here's the story I want you to remember about fusion and pattern recognition. He realized that in order to teach these young men at the particular time how to anticipate the next move that their enemy was going to make up in the air, of course it's very fast and quick and requires a huge amount of anticipation and the ability to see a sequence, see a pattern. In order to teach them that, before they came into the large conference room that he did his seminars in every single day, he took apart 4 elements, completely pulled them apart, broke them all up into their individual components, And here were those things that they broke apart. One was a set of skis. The other one was a tiny toy military tank. And little boys have them, with the military tanks and the way that the vehicle navigates and moves forward and so on. Another part of it that was laying on the floor in this massive conference room was a speedboat hull and an engine that was sitting aside and separated from each other. So all this stuff, so there's the skis, the speedboat, and also a bicycle. All the components to a bicycle have been broken apart, all the screws and the nuts and everything like that, and they were also laying on the floor. It's a giant mess. So in come the young men for their seminar that day from the esteemed Colonel Boyd, and he said, this is our task today, to create something out of all this stuff that's on the floor. This is a true story. It's a great story. I read it years ago in Fast Company magazine. Anyway, so that was a big thing, and everybody, it was a very hard challenge. They couldn't figure out what to do and how to put all these parts together, and what's the point? What are we trying to create with this diverse assemblage, seemingly unrelated? What are we going to create? Anybody have any idea? That was the day that the snowmobile was first created in the Pentagon that day in Colonel John Boyd's training room, after hours and hours of cobbling together and experimenting with all these individual parts. Of course, they have the skis on the ground, they have the little engine from the speedboat in back, they had the bicycle handles, they had the traction, of course, of the little toy tank, and so on. That's how they created the very first snowmobile. So the point is this, is that just because it's not obvious to you by using linear sequential analytics, which is the normal way we run our businesses, we break things down into individual parts, and then we go, well, A to B, and then B to C, and then C to D, and it all seems very numerical and predictable, and it results in minor incremental change, right? Not necessarily game-changing innovation, usually very incremental, oftentimes line extensions. Do you know, for instance, how many kinds of potato chips Lay's has that are simply brand extensions or line extensions of an existing core brand? That's the kind of incrementalism that I'm kind of making fun of right now. I'm talking about redefining categories, redefining entire market segments, and using fusion as a way to do it. Now, fusion applies by putting things together. It's like 2 + 2 = 5, right? We all know what synergy is. 2 + 2 = 5. That's what fusion is all about. And it can be applied to all kinds of situations, right? For instance, media. You're sitting there trying to figure out what kind of advertising should I buy? Should I post organic on Facebook and tweet? And do I need all these pieces? Fusion, right? Fusion is the multi-channel universe that we operate in today is fusionary. Very important for you to keep thinking about, how do I pull things together? Now, I'm going to tell you how to do this. Think of your individual product interacting with the customer, right? And there's a transactional focus, right? It's right here. This is what we do. We sell people a product at this particular point in their life. They buy it, and it's great, and then that's the end of it, and they walk away, and we make our money, and we move on to the next isolated transaction. Right? And if you're thinking about, well, what can I do that would be better, or we could make more money, or create more value, and so on, consider this fusion-oriented strategy. Think of all the things that your customer is encountering, especially stressful things, before they even walk in your door. All the things that are related to preparing to buy your product. Just give that some thought for a minute. And then they do the deal, they do the transaction, they pay you, thanks very much, they walk out of your retail store, whatever it is. And then right afterwards, of course, there are a number of other things that occur. The way they use the product, different things that happen, they blend it, they take it into an environment, whatever. And so you've got all these interesting interactions and hassles, by the way, and customer machinations that are going on prior to and right after, right, the product is sold. So if you see the reason for pattern recognition and for fusing things together. You kind of get that, right? Because you pull out your cell phone right now. While you're watching this show, pull out the cell phone. Just look at it for a minute, all right? If that isn't a great example of fusion, I don't know what is. It's a camera, it's a music machine, right? It's a GPS thing, it's an adding machine, it's a bunch of stuff. What a great example of fusion every single day. Now ask yourself, what if my company was as multifunctional and as valuable as this cell phone that I rely on every single day? Think about this. So if you, as you lead up to this transaction, if you lead up to it and you say, you know, that's a hassle, that's kind of a hassle, what if we sold them a system solution, right? Not an isolated transaction about just our product, but wove together. It takes work, by the way. Wove together so they actually purchased a system-oriented, and then right after the product, other things happen, right? You buy a car in a car lot. It used to be the very first thing you do is go to the DMV, right? You know, and you got to buy car insurance, right? And you waste an entire day standing there and waiting and taking care of all the procedures, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. Nobody seems to understand that can all be that could all be woven and blended and bundled together with a fusionary solution. So I hope I haven't moved too fast. This is kind of a stream of consciousness explanation of fusion strategy, but I wanted to give you something truly workable. Now, if you ask yourself this, why have I not done this already, right? This seems kind of obvious. We could have figured this out, and the answer is as follows. You don't have the courage to approach other companies and form an alliance, because this does require bundling and pulling different things together. That means you've got to get to know whoever has those things. Right? You can't obviously purchase them all and put them all in your individual inventory. So you do have to be able to make friends, and that's part of our economy. That's what the internet economy is all about, is affiliation, affinity, finding people that you can collaborate with and create a fusionary solution, a value-added solution for your customer. It's a very exciting idea, and it's something that you need to think about doing quickly, because it adds value right away. And it's a really easy analysis. By the way, my name is Lynn Hinderrocker. This is WOWBIZ Nebraska. We are so glad to have you here. This is a show very different than anything you've ever watched, because fusion involves creativity, and that is the essence of this show. We talk about job creation, we talk about workforce development, we talk about economics, but what we're really talking about is the missing ingredient in our economy today, in our society, all the way down to our educational school system, and that is a lack of creativity. So keep that in mind as you say, how can we employ the fusion strategy and create more value and differentiate ourselves and make a lot of money? All right, now, I got a great guest coming up. This is a great young man coming up right after this. We're going to chat, and he's a very interesting guy. He'll fit right into this dialogue. But I do want to tell you both about the sponsors of WOWBIZ Nebraska, all right? They don't just come along every day. These are special organizations. You can trust them to deliver. The first one is Curzon Promotional Graphics. Curzon, that's C-U-R-Z-O-N, Promotional Graphics. You must talk to them because visuals are driving deals and transactions and attention. It's ultimately, that in the end, that's what it's all about, right? Attention being driven by visuals. And Curzon can get that done for you, whether it's small stuff, minor stuff, massive, building, signage, all kinds of stuff. You can trust those people. They've been around a long time. Now, the second sponsor right here on WOWBIZ Nebraska, I'm very excited to talk to you about alphatech1.com. Just like it sounds, Alpha Tech, it's T-E-C-H, 1, O-N-E, alphatech1.com. These people, when you have a virus and your computer's a little sluggish and nothing's happening, they will come to your office, they will come to your home, they will disconnect, take it, go back, right? Check it out, talk to you on the phone a little bit about it, and then come and deliver it. The convenience is unbelievable. So many people waste their time with computer repair and fussing, and it's very distracting. So AlphaTech One will take care of that problem for you. Our entire economy is becoming seamless, frictionless. One more example. Welcome back to WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderocker. We've had a great show so far. You've learned about fusion. You learned about the power of innovation. And so, by the way, I want to introduce you to Jason Feldman because he knows all about, whether he knows about it or not is another deal, but he understands fusion. He definitely is an innovator. He pulls people together to extract their very best at a core entrepreneurial level. It's such a pleasure for me to welcome Jason Feldman.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure to have you, Jason. I've been talking about this for some time. You know, I just have to skip back to what we've been discussing because it's a big topic and you have a natural bent for pulling people together and diverse people. You seem to really intuitively understand the power of bringing diverse people into a room and then kicking back and just kind of letting things unfold. Tell me, where did you come up with that skill? Did you learn that, or is it just a natural thing to say, hey, everybody, just chat, and an hour later we're all going, this is amazing?
Yeah, it's not a natural skill, I don't think. I think it was, in hindsight, I think in reflection, I realized what got me to that point. And it was an interest in a lot of diverse things, a lot of different topics.
Curiosity is part of the whole deal.
Sure, and and it was an interest in things like the local food system, learning about myself and my natural skills of being an activator and a creative problem solver
and a catalyst.
Sure, and the entrepreneurial circles and wanting to solve societal problems, and that led to networking with the entrepreneurial community or the nonprofit community.
And let's just stop there for a second. Yeah. There are a lot of entrepreneurial activities and programs and projects, and they focus on getting their products up and running and blah, 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 right? But I found it so interesting that you did make the bridge to the greater good, social responsibility. You brought everybody into that dialogue. People seemed to feel like that was a natural extension of what they were doing, even though when they got there, they weren't really thinking about that. So I want to compliment you on that, but keep going. So these groups, and I've been to at least, I want to say 3 of them over time that you've organized. Some of them are probably non-existent at this point, but what have you really learned since you've been in Omaha and you've had these 3-4 groups and so on? What do you say to yourself or your wife, your new wife, about these groups?
I think in reflection, having a diverse set of kind of social circles that I played around in, I think that what I learned most from a lot of this community organizing with very diverse backgrounds of people who otherwise may not intersect. What that led for me being in the middle of this is a lot of empathy and compassion for people with different backgrounds and perspectives. And I think ultimately having that very diverse spectrum and network of people led me to have a broader outlook on life and just coming up with innovative ideas and solutions to problems, because I'm able to empathize with different people and challenges that they face, which kind of comes up with richer solutions to things.
Yeah, and I think maybe in some cases you articulate their problem better than they do. And that's a good thing too. It's so helpful, by the way, to take one little run down this alley. When somebody else hears your challenge, or maybe what you've done in your life, but it doesn't seem like any big deal, and then somebody magnifies and reflects back who they see you as, and it's quite a different person and a better person. And it's such an uplifting and interesting experience, and I think you have the ability to do that. Anyway, so you've done all that. You still run what? How many groups? Let's give it a quick capsule here about these groups.
Lost track. Well, the Facebook groups, meetup groups, groups for people that wanting to get involved in community and volunteering, and people who want to start businesses. Well,
if somebody in my audience wants to meet Jason Feldman, where's the next good place that they should go? They want to go to the Live Lounge every Wednesday? Is that it?
Yeah, every Wednesday afternoon at 5:30, I host an event called the Live 402 Happy Hour. Each week I bring an inspiring change maker to come in and share their story, who they are, where they came from, where they're going, how they can get involved.
By the way,
but I was meeting a lot of people, and all that great inspiration was getting just bottleneck to me, and I wanted to expose other people to that. So just a close, intimate exchange to share ideas.
After you leave these meetings, some of which are more, some are a little boring, but some are inspiring. It varies from group to group. But do you go home and say, wow, I got to write down all the great things that I now want to do as a result of the meeting? Or do you get focused back on your kind of your new career in the real estate industry? How do you deal with all these people, all of which have something interesting to say?
Yeah, no, I don't bog down too much on documentation or anything like that. It's just it's just having exchanges with people, and you kind of inventory those back in your mind, and as you have a new interaction, maybe I meet and have coffee with somebody like Shauna Dorsey, who's in the tech community. I may not directly be involved in tech workforce development, but at some other time, I later come back to that when my hat that I wear with my passion of attraction and retention of talents in our community, and how do we reduce brain drain, and how do I relate that to my career in real estate as being a welcomer and resource connector to people who are moving to Omaha. I can take that little nugget of something that she said in that workforce development talk that she gave and apply that to my real estate world. And I think the more that, even if we're not in a primary circle of interest with maybe one of these speakers, more than likely there's a little nugget of inspiration or some way to apply that to your primary interest, and to stay focused on your primary interest, but apply lots of diverse topics and pieces to what you're primarily interested in.
Does it chew up your time personally? Do you feel like you run out of time that prevents you from, like I said, moving forward on some other things, whether it's family or profession or whatever? Do you run out of time?
That was the 2018 epiphany for me. Every year I have an epiphany, and a big part of my 2018 epiphany was to say no to things that don't align with my primary goal. And so my primary goal for myself and how I'm serving this community is to fill my cup before filling the cups of others. I know that my natural skills is to be an activator and a connector, but I realize that I have to fill my own cup before filling the cups of others. So I know that I can only say yes to activities and meeting with people who align with that goal. And fortunately, I'm still able to justify meeting with a diverse range of people. Because that's the value that I accumulate. Every new diverse person that I meet and exchange with adds to that inventory, that bank of knowledge and diverse knowledge that I can apply to making new connections.
I have to tell you, you remind me of somebody who has been here in this studio to introduce their book, Dr. David Thomas, who's a friend of mine. He talks about the theater of everyday life. He's a brilliant man and has great insight, but it was interesting talking to somebody who knew him. We had mutual interest in David Thomas. And he said, the thing about David that he does is that as you're having a regular conversation, he has such a broad realm of connections and ideas and people and so he'll pull a quote in, or an actor, or some quote from Shakespeare into just a mundane conversation, right? And he says it just enlivens your day and makes you realize, that the world is much bigger than you probably realize. Now, I think you might be one of those people as well. Do you read a lot, or is it mostly just oral and picking up?
I audiobook a lot.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm such a multitasker, which I know it's impossible to actually multitask. But when I'm doing yard work, and working on our rentals and things like that, we're always.
What's your favorite podcast?
Bigger Pockets podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so Bigger Pockets. It's a podcast. I think they got something like 300 or 400 episodes.
Wow.
And it's all about building wealth through real estate. Yeah. And they have different offshoots, Bigger Pockets Money and Bigger Pockets Business podcasts.
Okay. There will be people writing this down, by the way.
And they very well should.
They should, yes. Yeah. Outstanding. Well, tell us, as we have just a couple minutes here, a little bit about where you're at in your career right now, what you're doing, and so on. Because everyone's like, wow, man, I'm watching this guy go this way and that way. What does he do for a living anyway?
Man. So doing that in a couple of minutes is challenging, but I'll give you just real quick cliff notes of how I got to where I'm at now, and where I'm going.
Yeah, please.
So, when I first started adulting, I graduated from a rural high school with a student counselor that probably wasn't licensed to be one, and went to school with 46 kids in my class, and I just knew I wanted to serve my community, and my counselor said, well, you should go be a paramedic or firefighter or a cop. And well, I said, all right, well, I'll become a police officer, and studied criminology, got on a little rural police department. that was my first go. I always use this, life is like a pipeline, or rather it should be more like a funnel.
Yeah.
Exactly. And realized that was the first go in life with this career in law enforcement, of learning what I'm passionate about, what my strengths are and what they're not.
I see.
And so I did that. I lasted for about 3 years with that, and then I came back here to Omaha. I worked at the prison briefly. Then that reinforced that law enforcement was my career path, and did some worldly travel, lived overseas for quite a while, had a lot of really interesting, just diverse jobs, and one that was most interesting was working with a home developer who was building homes out of hempcrete. It's like a concrete mixture made out of hemp.
Wow. Came
back home to Nebraska after all that travel, and created a trade association to open up the industry for hemp in Nebraska. And then that springboarded into working with an entrepreneur who was starting a company based on hemp-related products.
Wow.
That person was involved.
You're a man ahead of your time.
Well, yeah. Surprisingly.
All right, we got 1 minute left, my friend.
Long story short, that led to the entrepreneurship community, working and realizing I was great at helping these entrepreneurs.
That's when I met you.
They were involved in an incubator that was used, that all these entrepreneurs live into a house together. That experience got me interested in realizing that the entrepreneurship community had gaps, and we needed to create a pipeline for attraction and retention of entrepreneurial talent.
Yes.
That led to my passion for how do we attract and retain talent in Omaha.
Yes.
That led to what career can I be a catalyst for, and that was the real estate industry. So, creating housing and helping people buy and sell homes.
All right.
Was my way of meeting new people. And
you're in Nebraska Realty, is that correct?
Oh no, I'm at Keller Williams.
Keller Williams, thank you.
Keller Williams is the largest real estate company in the world.
Is that right?
It is.
All right. So how do we find you online in your real estate role, real quick?
Yeah, well, you can go to live402.com, live402.com. You can visit me on Facebook, just friend me on Facebook.
Right, Jason Feldman on Facebook, yeah. You're everywhere on Facebook, and it's a great pleasure to have you here. I finally got the whole story on you, man.
Yeah, well,
Great
you got
to
a little
see
bit
you.
of it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's correct.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. This is WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderocker. I've got a great guest next time. Hang in there with us. We're always unloving, fresh, new, innovative ideas in the world of business. We appreciate your attendance and your attention. We'll see you next time.